Morning condenses into a pearled mist above the indeterminate conservatory, a glass labyrinth built on the edge of the many worlds arboretum. Inside its refracting walls, Arden shifts from aisle to aisle with the gait of someone who has learned to step neither too quickly nor too slowly. To hurry or dawdle would be to choose, and choice has strange consequences when every bud is entangled with possibilities. He is, in the words of the faculty directory, the conservatory's quantum gardener, though he thinks of himself simply as the keeper of Schrödinger roses, cultivars, whose petals are perpetually suspended between bloom and decay until observed. He pauses at plot E7, touches the rim of a clay pot, and hums the calibration note issued by the Arboretum's temporal metronome. The roses respond with a faint tremor. Auburn petals unfold and blacken at once. Sap pulses forward and drains backward. Fragrance mixes with an intimation of rot. Arden takes a reading on his parallax prism, recording spin orientations of the pollen grains. Everything sits comfortably in superposition. To tend these plants is not to prune or water in the ordinary sense. It is to shepherd probabilities, persuading the flowers to remain undecided just a little longer. A soft scuff of shoes disrupts the hush. The conservatory rarely admits visitors without clearance. Tourists complain the roses smell like nostalgia and ruin. Donors fear they will glimpse their own deaths in the petals. Arden turns, bracing for another nervous docent. Instead, a woman stands beneath the arch of entangled wisteria, notebook under arm, hair gathered in a knot that seems to defy friction. She smiles, not apologetically but inquisitively, as though trespass were a hypothesis. "Are you the gardener?" she asks, her voice low, precise, the syllables measured as though each might be weighed. "I'm Leora. I've come to find beauty, or the possibility of proving it." Arden crooks an eyebrow. "Beauty doesn't usually come with a hypothesis test. Should it not?" she replies. "If it matters, shouldn't we ask how we can know it's real rather than a subjective delight?" He can't help but chuckle. "You're a philosopher. Guilty. Aesthetic logician, technically." "It's early," Arden says, "but I suppose the roses are willing to be cross-examined." Leora steps forward. At once a cluster of buds flickers from coy mauve to brittle gray. Arden adjusts his stance. The roses stabilize, mauve and gray overlaying one another like double exposure. Leora observes the oscillation without blinking. "Extraordinary," she murmurs. "The blossom is and is not in the same moment. That's the working principle." Arden wipes dew, if dew it is, from his gloves. "They are both beautiful and ruined until you decide which story to tell." The philosopher raises her notebook. "Is that your horticultural credo? Beauty is optional?" "Not optional," he says. "Contextual, observer dependent. But what if beauty were objective, ontologically independent?" Leora asks. "Wouldn't that be worth proving?" Arden smiles ruefully. "We propagate uncertainty here, doctor. Just Leora." Leora. If you collapse the superposition to prove something, you also kill half the flower's possibilities. That sounds like moral blackmail. Her eyes glitter. But perhaps it's romantic to think a thing thrives only when left undecided. Arden considers the next logical step. Escort her to security. Instead, he hears himself say, "Would you care for tea?" The kettle loops between boiling and cooling, so it's always the right temperature, and never quite realized. They sit at a gleaming table where cups phase between fullness and emptiness. Arden's mentor designed this break room to teach interns the etiquette of probability. Sip, and you interrupt a timeline. Abstain, and thirst persists. Leora takes a tentative drink. In her cup, the liquid assumes a reassuring state of existence. Cinnamon and hibiscus. Arden notices the faint line between her brows, the concentration with which she acknowledges small marvels. "Tell me," she says, "what compels someone to garden uncertainty?" Compels, Arden tests the word. "I wouldn't call it compulsion, more a promise. If we keep the roses indetermined, we keep narrative space open. People donate to the conservatory because they fear endings. And you? He looks beyond the glass walls where the horizon splits into morning and dusk simultaneously. I lost someone, he answers. Or I might have. The prognosis was both terminal and survivable, depending on which scan you believed. I started wondering whether ambiguity might shelter love, prolong it. Leora sets her cup down softly. Ambiguity is not refuge, Arden. It's a waiting room. Sooner or later, the doctor calls your name, he doesn't retort. Debate with philosophers, he knows, is like pruning thorny stems. The wrong angle draws blood. Instead, he gestures toward the central aisle. Shall we conduct your experiment? She flips open her notebook, where axioms wait in crisp columns. Together they approach the grand trellis home to the eldest Schrödinger cultivar designated Prima Rosa. Each bud is roughly the size of a small apple, luminous in shadow in equal measure. I propose, Leora begins, that beauty, if real, must survive observation. That is, we should be able to identify it, collapse the wave function, and still find it beautiful. Arden toes the line taped on the tile floor. Beyond this point, observation risk becomes significant. And if, upon measurement, it withers, what then? Then beauty was never there, only the thrill of possibility, she says. Arden lifts protective goggles onto his forehead. Very well. Define your methodology. I will describe the flower's characteristics in advance, symmetry, hue, fragrance, then observe directly. If the collapsed state aligns with those descriptors and still moves me aesthetically, we uphold the hypothesis. And my role? You'll serve as secondary observer. If our accounts match, we gain intersubjective corroboration. Arden wants to protest. Two observers will accelerate decoherence. But the seriousness in her face ushers him into compliance. He enters data. Ambient probability density, coherence half-slick. Overhead, the metronome emits a subtler chime, signaling elevated stakes. Leora inhales. Ready? Arden nods. They step past the line. Reality shudders. The rose cedes secrecy. Petals snap into being, velvet burgundy edges gilded. At the same moment, they crisp, curl, desiccate. The fragrance bursts, blood orange, cinnamon, and curdles into mold. A petal drifts, both supple and ash. Leora gasps, not in fear, but in recognition. Beautiful, she whispers. Tears gather. He can't tell if they're for awe or grief. She reaches out as though to steady herself, but Arden clasps her wrist gently. Contact could shift variables. Their eyes lock. For an instant, neither speaks, and Arden feels a resonance, as if the two of them share a single superposed heart, beating and pausing. Then the resonance breaks. The rose wilts into unequivocal decay, petals falling like verdicts. Leora exhales, scribbles in her notebook, voice trembling. Observation destroyed half the phenomenon, but left the other half magnificent, if only briefly. Does that qualify as proof? Arden studies the carcass of the bloom. Was it still beautiful after collapse? Yes, she says. Yes. He wants to trust her, yet years of coaxing uncertainty remind him how memory embellishes. He stoops, collects a fallen petal. It crumbles, leaving rust on his glove. He turns back to Leora. Then perhaps beauty survives, but at cost. That's true of many valuable things, she answers. She folds her notebook, but does not retreat. Their proximity now feels charged, like two particles destined for entanglement. Later, in the archive gallery, Leora examines holograms of historical roses, asking about spectral signatures, fragrance spectra. Arden supplies data, moving between server panels. Conversation evolves. Her skepticism softens into curiosity. His guardedness slips toward candor. They dispute Plato, Kant, quantum decoherence. They laugh at a misprint labeling uncertainty a garden weed. Hours accumulate until the conservatory's skylights tint with evening yet morning shimmer. Walk with me, Arden suggests. They stroll down the probability promenade, where every footstep divides into myriad echoes. Leora pauses beside a basin holding seeds in sealed envelopes. These, Arden explains, contain genomes we haven't decided to plant. Their potential blooms color the future distribution of beauty, depending on funding and weather, both of which are uncertain. Leora traces the glass. You could keep them dormant forever and call that stewardship. We might, he concedes, but then nobody would ever smell their fragrance. She looks up. Her gaze is simultaneously challenge and invitation. Will you plant them? That would collapse. The ambiguity, she finishes his sentence. Perhaps beauty demands courage more than caution. A long breath fills Arden's lungs. Would you help me choose one packet? The philosopher nods. They open an envelope labeled RNN, Carmine Paradox. Under the greenhouse's opalescent light, the seeds shimmer, spin, and pause. Arden fetches a trowel, Leora kneels. Together they press probabilistic kernels into soil. Arden sprinkles entanglement medium, murmuring an old horticultural mantra that sounds like a lullaby sung by a particle accelerator. When they stand, their gloves brush. Static passes between them. Real static, not metaphor. Quarks adjusting registers. Arden feels warmth flush his face. Leora doesn't look away. A hush occupies the space usually filled by theoretical objection. Days or overlapping variants of the same day pass. Leora returns each morning evening bearing new arguments. What if beauty is emergent? What if the observer is also the garden? Arden counters with botanical analogies, quantum proofs. Their discussions bloom like recursive roses, each petal a proposition, each thorn a rebuttal. Yet beneath the intellectual lattice, another vine twines. Tenderness. One afternoon, the Carmine Paradox sprout rises, its stem oscillating between vigorous green and frail yellow. Leora proposes an experiment, simultaneous observation from opposite angles. They circle the pot, lock eyes across the flickering seedling. Arden's heart pounds with unreasonable stakes. The plant's fate feels interlaced with their own. They nod, observe, and the seedling steadies into a single hue, deep emerald, undeniable. A bud appears, small but definite. Leora smiles, radiant. Beauty persists, she pronounces. Or affection biases observation, Arden teases. Either way, she replies, stepping closer. I'd call it evidence that something worthwhile resists entropy. Their fingers entwine. This time the static forms a closed circuit, two bodies, one field. A rosebud overhead unambiguously opens, no withering parallel. The air releases perfume so vivid Arden's memory flares with images of the person he may be lost. Pain and solace coincide, and he realizes they need not cancel each other. They can superpose, enriching both. Evening drapes the conservatory. They sit on the threshold between lit aisle and shadowed alcove. Leora flips through her notebook, revealing pages once crisped, now softened by moisture and margin scribbles. I think, she says slowly, I came looking for proof, but found participation. Beauty isn't a theorem, it's a dialogue. Arden reaches to tuck a stray hair behind her ear, permission granted by the tilt of her head. And what is love? He asks quietly. Proof or participation? Entanglement, she answers. He laughs, a sound uncoordinated with any experimental protocol. Then what do we do now, my entangled philosopher? We choose, she whispers, knowing we'll forfeit infinite universes, but trusting the one we inhabit together. They rise. Arden leads her to the Primarosa's stand, now bearing only withered remains. He removes the Don't Touch placard. With deft fingers he prunes dead stems. Leora helps bag the debris, her motions reverent. When the pot is cleared, Arden presents a fresh cutting from the Carmine Paradox bud. Plant it, Leora urges. He does. Soil closes around possibility. They water it, not with entanglement medium, but plain, unequivocal water. The metronome pauses as though time concedes a beat. In the following weeks, the new cutting thrives. Roses open visibly, no shimmer of decay. Colleagues re enter the conservatory and gasp. Arden feels no regret for collapsed superpositions. Instead, he feels the sturdiness of presence. Leora takes residence in the adjacent study, her philosophical treatise evolving into poetry. She writes of petals that once balanced between being and not, now squarely alive, and how choice itself is a form of beauty. One evening they sit beneath the skylight as literal dusk finally settles. No parallel dawn. Arden speaks of his maybe lost beloved. Her name was Myra. Doctors said remission and relapse in alternating breaths. She asked me not to watch her waver between states. I built a career around refusing collapse. Leora lays her hand on his chest. I am sorry. I kept wondering if somewhere she still lived because I never looked long enough to confirm. Perhaps she does in some branching path, Leora murmurs. But in this one, what do you choose? Arden closes his eyes, memory shakes loose. I choose to grieve completely, to love again completely. He opens his eyes, meeting Leora's, to observe. She kisses him then. It is tender, unambiguous. No collapse feels destructive. Instead, the union feels like synthesis wave and particle illusions dissolved into shared breath. The conservatory adapts. Arden designates a new wing, the decided garden where plants are encouraged to complete their cycles. Students marvel at the certainty. Flowers bloom, fade, seed. Some complain the magic is gone. Others find relief. Arden continues to maintain the original plots of superposed roses, a living reminder of roads not taken. But the axis of his devotion has shifted, tending both determinacy and possibility. He and Leora walk daily between wings, hands clasped. Her treatise becomes collaborative. Arden co-authors chapters describing horticultural aesthetics. They propose that beauty's persistence is less about timeless forms than about repeated acts of choosing in the face of entropy. The paper is accepted by journals both scientific and philosophical, confusing reviewers who cannot parse where methodology ends and metaphor begins. On the anniversary of the Carmine Paradox's planting, they host an open observatory night. Visitors file through, witnessing roses that neither wither nor bloom until glimpsed, and others that commit to vibrant existence. Leora reads aloud, "Beauty is not discovered, but negotiated, not proven, but pledged." Arden, standing behind her, feels the words pulse through his ribcage. After the crowd disperses, they return to the original Primarosa bed. The cutting they planted a year ago is now a towering specimen, scarlet petals luminous beneath lunar lamps. They regard it silently. For Arden, the site folds time, yesterday's doubt, today's assurance, tomorrow's decay, all layered within the bloom. He reaches out, but not to pluck. He merely brushes a petal. Leora mirrors him. Their fingers meet on the flower's soft edge. In that contact lies mutual assent. They will keep choosing each other, collapsing and renewing, aware that every kiss rules out other timelines, and accepting that renunciation is the price of intimacy. Their devotion, thus corroborated, is neither quantum illusion nor classical certainty, but a third thing, a rose perpetually blooming in the domain between logic and affection. Outside, night is indisputably night. Inside, the metronome resumes its rhythm. Yet Arden now hears it differently, not ticking away infinite alternatives, but counting heartbeats grounded in chosen reality. He turns to Leora. She closes her notebook. No more proofs required tonight. They walk out, leaving the roses to oscillate or to rest, hand in hand, gardening whatever future may follow from a single beautiful decision.